Electrocast.
Hey business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through October 29th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends October 29th, 2025.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, today marks a special milestone, our 400th episode. So thank you for being a part of this journey and helping us build a world with better bosses. To celebrate, we're talking about one of the most important leadership skills, communications. And my guest is Salvatore Manzi. He is a leadership communication coach and author of the #1 bestseller, Clear and Compelling. He spent more than 2 decades helping leaders turn complex ideas into messages that inspire. In this episode, we explore how to make your message stick, why metaphors move minds, and how introverts can thrive as communicators. This is an exciting episode I know you'll love. So are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership, the show built on one simple and powerful truth. Leadership is a people business. If you're ready to become a better boss and a stronger leader, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Today, I'm joined by Salvatore Manzi. Salvatore is a leadership communications coach with over 20 years of experience helping executive entrepreneurs and leaders amplify their influence and impact. Salvatore has coached leaders presenting at the United Nations, guided investors in raising $100 million over their goal, and helped biopharma scientists present their work globally. With an emphasis on frameworks, principles, and techniques, he empowers leaders to connect authentically and navigate high-stakes conversations with competence. His latest book is called Clear and Compelling: Communication Strategies for Big Thinkers with Bold Ideas, which has quickly become a #1 Amazon bestseller. And I am excited to have him on the program to learn from his expertise. So, Salvatore, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
It's great to meet you, and we've had a great conversation before we press record, and I'm excited to talk to you about your book and the things that you're working on. But let's get started about talking about the book. So Clear and Compelling is this new book, #1 on Amazon. Congratulations. That's great news. Tell us a little bit about the book. What's the big idea behind this particular book that you wrote, and what were you trying to communicate?
I love it. The big idea. It is clear and compelling. It's communication strategies for big thinkers with bold ideas. The idea behind it is this: 67% of technical leaders have a struggle communicating that technical expertise and brilliance to non-technical audiences, stakeholders, key deciders. And this book unpacks all of the strategies and techniques that work for more analytical, tech-minded, data-driven people in communicating to non-technical people. After 20 years of specializing in STEM leaders and technical leaders, I've put it all into one book so that they can go out there and turn their ideas into influence.
That is such an important point. I think, being an engineer myself and being in the business world for so many years, I found that to be the case. Oftentimes that we're discussing a very difficult technical term, and I might be talking to somebody with like a marketing or sales background or maybe an accounting background, and they just look at me like, a deer in a headlight and don't understand what I'm talking about or the nuances behind what we're trying to do technically. And I know, like, as a young leader, I get very frustrated with, like, how come these people don't understand what I'm talking about? This is basic, engineering, and I just wasn't talking their language, and they weren't understanding what I was trying to say.
About 100%, the curse of knowledge. I'm so familiar with my world that when I'm communicating to somebody outside that world, I forget what context to land it in so that they can understand it. And there's so much more to it. Like I think of engineer to engineer, they almost speak in zeros and ones. Like we're
Mm.
speaking the same language, we can understand each other. But then when engineering goes to talk to sales and marketing, there's a miscommunication, there's a mismatch. And so code switching to a language that they can understand and then take action on is important in order to succeed.
I love that. I love that. So is it the same with technical leaders trying to when they find themselves leading non-technical teams? So in other words, instead of just trying to communicate with either peers or people above you, but also with people below you, is that also an area where leaders can sometimes struggle?
100%. There's a whole diversity in communication on anyone's team, right? And so creating a space that everyone can excel and sharing their brilliance, but yet keeping it within the scope of the meeting or the work is the art of leadership, right? And as a leader, I need to be able to coach my members how to show up, how to create connection before they drop a download of information, how to make sure that their information is connected to something visual so that people can picture it and move and take action on it. Um, it is often by demonstrating this, right? But oftentimes it is in the fine nuance of giving constructive feedback that helps someone on the team move to the next level of communicating their brilliance.
Interesting. So what are some communication struggles that leaders particularly face? So, oftentimes, it's funny because having led so many different manufacturing businesses, one of the things I recognize is that sometimes you communicate something, you think that your message is heard, right? And then you find out later that it didn't stick, right? What are some challenges there with getting your message to resonate with the people that work for you?
Oh, I love this question. And I don't know anybody out there who hasn't struggled with what you just described. Like,
Yeah.
I gave you all of the data and yet it didn't make sense. Like, yeah, you did yes in the meeting and now you're telling me no. And like, what happened? What was the disconnect? Or if anybody's ever left a meeting or a conversation and said, oof, I wish I had said, it's all of us. We've all had a lag in communication. And what I find the number one challenge is in the principle that I call you, then me. You, then me. If I can challenge myself as a leader to speak about my listener, their concerns, their problems, their hopes, their fears, just validating what they just said before I get to my agenda, my ask, my want, my advice, my feedback, I create a feedback loop that actually creates rapport and allows our communication to start happening. And I think that as a leader, there's always the urgency of time, right? We have too many fires to put out. I don't have a lot of time to spend connecting with my team member or whoever and making sure that they feel heard and seen before I give them the feedback. There's a want for me to move things quickly. And there is a need to just in one sentence, even a half a sentence of expressing what I heard you say or expressing, well, I can imagine that you're thinking this around this before I get to, and this is what you need to do, and this is what you're entirely wrong about. Because if I can do this part first, they can hear me. If I don't do this part first, they're going to take what I said and filter it through. Well, did you think about this? Or do you even understand where I'm coming from? Or do you even know me? And so they dismiss what was just said. And to your point, if I could, like I call it meaning over metrics, the challenge that you mentioned at the beginning. When I share all of the data and it is very clear, and you should be able to take that data and then go and work on it, right? The people prioritize meaning over metrics, meaning that if you are giving them all the data, they will find the parts that have meaning, meaning resonance, relevance, familiarity, and dismiss the rest of it, especially if it is complex data. So 80% of what you said is a wash because the 20% that is connected to something that they do understand is what stood out. And that is why oftentimes a leader will share with their team, this is the data, this is what we need to do from the data. And they will not get it because the leader hasn't yet made the case for this is what's relevant and meaningful about this piece of data, this piece of data, this piece of data, this piece of data. Then they take all 4 pieces and run with it. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's interesting because I was thinking about I did all employee meetings for, over 20 years with in manufacturing people. I do it every month. And, I had a problem with one plant. We had a high scrap rate. And I was trying to communicate like how much money we were spending in scrap every month. And I just could see the glazed over eyes. And it was like, I would talk about $20,000, $25,000. And it didn't mean anything because it's sort of like funny money in a company. So one time I decided to just switch it up. And so I would say, I would say how much money we spent in scrap that month, and I would look up what a new car cost of a particular of that, and I would find that, and I said, we just it was a Porsche Cayenne we bought last month in our scrap rate, and I would show a picture of the car, and it was a way to like sort of connect them to this is not fake money, this is not just like monopoly money, but this is what we threw away. And I remember one month we had like enough scrap that was like a small house, and I had a picture of a house, and it was just like, and it's like, guys, we could have bought a house if we had not scrapped all this money. And I think it was, I could see like the light bulbs going off in the room when I started doing that, and it was like I was trying to figure out a way to communicate it to where it meant something to the people that I was communicating with, right? So to your point, it's like trying to find something that had relevance versus just $20,000 or $25,000, which just sounds like fake money when you're sitting in an all-employee meeting, right?
You're making me like giddy with excitement because you are touching one of the critical points in my book, and that is metaphors move minds.
Yes.
Metaphors move minds. Anybody out there who has not had their message stick, I can almost guarantee it's 90% of the time because there was no picture that was related to the corollary data. I mean, your data is great, it's brilliant, it's precise, but until I connect it to a picture, a visual, an emotion, I can't actually visualize what's happening. So what you're saying, like you found a metaphor for the scrap that made it visual for people to stop wasting all that scrap. I'll give you the example. I have a client I've been working with for a long time in healthcare who was having trouble moving her data into the upper ranks to get it moved upon. There came a point where it became mission critical. She started using her Prius as an analogy because that's something she owned and something she's passionate about. And she'd say things like, "You're putting gas in my Prius." And I would stop the room. And all of a sudden, they would tune in and listen to the finer points of the data that she was sharing. And then she would correlate it between electric and gas in a vehicle. And they would, oh, I get it. She went from director to SVP. And she is now running the data for the organization because she took her passion or hobby, used it as a metaphor to start explaining the data and the science behind it. And I would offer that to anybody out there. Make a habit of this. Every day, pick up an object and tell me, how is your project like this object? Mm-hmm. It's a little exercise. Do it every day. Just pick up a random object and tell me, how is your project like this object? And then you will develop the muscle for metaphors, and you will find the metaphors that you stick with most. You used from cars to a Porsche Cayenne to a house, which is very visual, but maybe you're going to use skiing. I have a CFO who uses skiing as her metaphor for everything, and everybody in the company knows like, oh, she's going to have a metaphor around skiing, but it makes the message stick.
Yeah, I like it. You talked about the you then me, and this is really that's I would say that's probably more one-on-one communication, right? Versus, or it can also be done in a group.
Yeah, it's all y'all and me as well. I'm from Kansas, so I can say all y'all, and then me. If I can speak to all of my listeners, and there's a pushback comment, Salvatore, what do you mean? I can't address everybody in the audience, but you can speak in somewhat generalities many of you today are concerned about, and I know a lot of you know about, and I'm certain many of you are wondering. And by doing that sort of y'all, before I get to my agenda, I help them feel seen, and then they're able to put a part of their defenses down and start listening to what I have to say.
I love that. Is this related to is this around relatability? Because you talk about one of the important points is for us to have effective communication, we have to relate to our audience, right? We have to relate to people we're communicating. Is that part of this?
Yes, the effective communication is on its degree of relatability, right? There is the more relevance I can feel with what you're saying, the more likely I am to get invested in and take action upon the great ideas that you're sharing. So building relatability into everything that you say is easy when you do a you then me. It's quite a challenge, but you can do this in your personal lives. And I've had a lot of clients come up and tell you, man, you saved my marriage. I wasn't goal here, but I'm glad. If you can make a habit of, I'm going to say something about the other person, their thinking, their perspective, whatever, before I share what I have to say, if you turn it into a muscle, then it becomes easier. And in those moments, even in the high urgency, you can still address the mood, the generalities of the crowd before delivering the very important information.
Interesting. So, do you have to be naturally empathetic to be able to sort of relate to people? Or, I mean, I know I've worked for a lot of bosses that just the empathy button was removed, or there's no DNA empathy in their bodies, right? And so they struggle with relating to others, right? It was like it's always about the mission, never about the people. And so if there are listeners that struggle a little bit with empathy, can you still be relatable in this way with us?
You're making me smile big right now. People ask me, can empathy be taught? And I'm like, 100%.
Yeah.
You enforce using this rule, you then me, then you can manufacture, and then it eventually becomes authentic in a sense of empathy towards the other person. I work with a lot of brilliant data scientists, right, who don't always have great social skills, and developing I call it gamifying saying the you before getting to the me allows them to start creating what feels more normal to the other person in terms of a social interaction. So it improves their entire lives, but especially as a leader trying to move bold ideas and get influence from them.
I love that. And I think listeners, hopefully you're picking up on this, is that, the question is, if you struggle with empathy, you can sort of hack it by, manufacturing it by creating a system. And I like that approach. For example, one of the things I talk about too is, like, I have a struggle to remember facts about people, but I keep spreadsheets of like all my employees, their spouses, the things they're into. And so if I know I'm going to have a meeting with somebody, I go to the spreadsheet because I don't naturally remember that stuff. And so I will actually go to my cheat sheets so that when I'm together, I remember certain aspects about them and I can relate. And so my audience, or the people I'm talking to, feel like I really know them, but I'm a little bit cheating. But if part of it is like I just don't have the recall, I got too many things on my mind, but I'm forcing myself to do that so that I can relate better. Is that But I like your approach. Same thing with empathy. Is if you approach this from a you then me, then I think you do it long enough, then it becomes habit. Right?
It becomes mechanized so that the hack becomes a habit, and it becomes something that you can utilize to some degree or not. And the you then me portion is an accordion, right? If it's a simple conversation, the you then me might be 3 or 4 words. If it's a TED talk, it might be 3 or 4 minutes. If it's a 3-day offsite, it might be full 5 minutes, right? The you then me is an accordion that you can adjust to the context of the situation that you're in. And what I also like about what you said, I like your cheat sheet, by the way, having like a background on people before you see them. I would recommend know the point, like know your goal when you're going into a conversation, when you're going into a presentation, when you're about to share in a meeting. Know your goal the same way you know that you're going to be talking to that person and you want to like find out some background on them or remind yourself of the background. Know what you want from the conversation. That will lead to a better outcome in it. So if you're going to pre-pave the conversation or presentation with background about them, pre-pave the conversation with a little bit of like, this is what I want to get out of it as well.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Leadership is a people business, and for men, real growth happens in the company of other men who push you to be better. Cadre of Men is a force multiplier for men who want more from life, more strength, more connection, and more purpose. I'm proud to be a member of this group. Right now, Cadre of Men is totally free. Ignite your fire with weekly Zoom forums, raw topical conversations, and powerhouse guest speakers sharpening your edge. Crush quarterly fitness and accountability challenges to forge unbreakable discipline. Unlock full access, deep dive into forums on family, career, fitness, and leadership with men who get it. And for those ready to charge harder, exclusive paid events like first aid mastery courses, team obstacle course battles, and grueling hiking trips that shatter your limit. Cadre of Men is a brotherhood built for men who want to become real leaders in their home, community, and at work. Cadre of Men is a brotherhood built for men who want to become real leaders in their home, work, and community. Join Cadre today. Your legacy awaits. Go to cadreofmen.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. We could all use more time. Amazon Business offers smart business buying solutions, so you can spend more time growing your business and less time doing the admin. I can see why they call it smart. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
This episode is brought to you by Nature's Bounty. Nature's Bounty believes your body is brilliant, naturally designed to thrive, inside and out. For those always looking for new ways to support your health from head to heels, Nature's Bounty has a range of over 400 vitamins and supplements born from 50 years of trust and care. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature. Visit naturesbounty.com to learn more.
Let's switch here a little bit to storytelling. So you say that storytelling, it can be a powerful tool to help us communicate, help us drive, mission success. Tell us a little bit about storytelling and why it works effectively in communications.
Emotion precedes cognition. We feel before we think. There was a Wayland study that proved that in using a CAT scan, watching people's amygdala, when they show an image, the amygdala would start emotions and feelings before the brain had fully processed what it is that the image is of. What that tells us is that when I'm sharing information, the body, the person is feeling something before they're processing what the information is. Storytelling creates feeling. It's a whole complicated neuroscience around mirror neurons and the way our brains work psychologically, but storytelling connects with the emotion and the head and the heart together. So if I can pair my data with a story, it's going to ensure that my message is actually heard and seen. You kind of proved this earlier when you mentioned the Porsche Cayenne and the house. Like that story of that is what actually moved people to action and start taking the action. So my challenge to anybody out there is to take your data point and find a way to explain it visually, whether it's within a metaphor or with a story or an example or an analogy. Find a way to explain that data point using some sort of a picture this kind of statement, and you're going to more likely moving the needle in their direction.
So when we're looking for storytelling, I know we've talked about analogies, and I like that idea too. If we're look, how do we end up finding stories, and what are maybe some do's and don'ts when it comes to storytelling? Are there mistakes that can be made with storytelling?
I suppose, first of all, everybody's going to judge your story on a different metrics, right? Some people like a lot of detail. Some people would rather you just got to the point of the story. Some people enjoy the ride. Some people just want the punchline, right? So you've always got to gauge your audience. All communication is contextual, right? So are there some bad things? Sure. Here's what I'll tell you, my truth. And I think there's probably a lot of leaders out there that are probably thinking the same thing. I'm not a storyteller. Nah, that person tells stories. You should hear him tell stories, right? Then I realized that if you follow a structure and you have certain elements, you're going to have a story that other people are going to repeat afterwards. It's all about a structure and elements. I mean, I'm an analytical person. When I first got into public speaking, I was a disaster. And so I set a course to figure out, what is the psychology? How does the brain work? What's the neuroscience? What's the organizational behavior? How do groups function? And that's how I created the frameworks and the strategies that I offer in my book. And I've been workshopping for the last 20 years. The structure of a story where a lot of people get wrong is they start telling the what before the why. If you can tell me why you're telling the story, why it matters, why I should care, before you get in the details of what happened along the way, I'm going to be invested in the story. And if you keep key elements in the story, I won't go into it here, but you can go onto my website and get a download document there. But if you have the elements and the structure, you're going to have a great story, even if you don't think you're a great storyteller.
That's great. I know, I do these, lectures on leadership. I go into universities where I'm not the teacher, I'm just a guest lecturer, but I do tell stories from my career. And one of the stories I tell is a major failure I had at a test lab, and how my boss had my back and basically helped me, provided cover while I redesigned the product and got back to the test lab. And so it's a long story. It's not a long story, but the story it's all about having your employees back. But so that's the mission. But the story takes them through, this failure of a young engineer and thinking that you're going to get fired and all this sort of thing. But that story seems to resonate probably more than anything else I give in that lecture, because they go along for the ride of something that happened in real life to someone. Then you can feel the feelings of, the equipment completely failed. I had to call my boss. I thought I was going to get fired, and instead I got, backed up. So I think that, just to your point, having that story, instead of just saying, leaders should have their employees back. But now I tell a story of what it's like to have, and the feelings I had after that leader did that, and how I felt towards him. That has more impact than just saying that you should have employees back, right? So I think the story resonates, right?
It's so good what you're talking about. And so when I tell a story, it becomes a sort of lived experience for my listener. Because of neurons, because of the way humans work together, when I'm hearing a story, it's almost like I'm living the experience myself, which is why it becomes so memorable and powerful, is because of that. Now, I would offer to any leader out there, when you're really wanting to make a point, such as leaders have your back, have them tell the story. Have okay, we're in a meeting. I want everybody to turn to a partner and talk about a time when you felt like your leader really had your back. What happens is then it's not just a learned experience. It's actually the visceral lived experience that they're sharing and reiterating, and that cements that detail and that pattern even more. So you could be in a meeting, share the importance of what you're working on, and then have everybody turn to each other and share their why it's important for them, their area of expertise, their investment in the company as that employee. Then that will reiterate your desire to get whatever it is that you need to done, because they all become vested in the experience as well.
What I'm hearing is you're saying it's not just your story, but it's their story that's important.
Yeah, the why. The why is so important. How many companies roll out a new mission, vision, values kind of thing, and it doesn't stick?
Yeah.
It needs to be adopted on an individual basis. It needs to be taken to the individual and have them really do the work of aligning. Where do my values match the values of the company? Where are we aligned? How can I stand behind these values? Where the friction points are is where you want to go to your leader and talk about it and work it out. But just inserting and overlaying, these are our mission, values, and vision, it's not going to stick. But when it becomes a lived experience of them sharing how that value is important to them, is really when it becomes a lived experience for the organization. To that point, a lot of times when I'm working with a client, I will start with a values exercise. And I'm sure that there's probably some of this in many of the courses that you teach, getting to the values that I have as a leader. How are those values shaped? How are they being lived? And how are they being challenged in any situation?
Yeah, we do talk about it. I think it's really important because I think those values then represent the culture of the organization. So it's one thing to say, you put on a piece of paper, these are our values, but what really resonates with employees is the lived values. What does the leader actually do? They say, for us, on time, is being on time is critically important, right? But the leader is always late to the meeting, so there's a disconnect there. So it's really the lived values of the leader that becomes the culture, and I think that's what employees recognize right away. And actually, when there's a disconnect between the stated values and what the leader actually does, then they don't, then you have, then they feel like they have an inauthentic leader, right? And they feel like everything's bogus.
Yeah. We're all very quick. I mean, you roll out new values to an organization, they all become skeptics.
Right away.
Skeptics. Okay, well, we're going to wait and see if you actually live these values.
Exactly.
They're going to be waiting to call out the one person who didn't follow it. And to your point earlier, like when you can name the failure and what you learned from that, you become like more trustworthy and the leader people want to follow. I think that the challenge for a lot of people in sharing failures is that if I go around and ask everybody, talk about like a failure that you had or like that, if we just leave it on the nose of the failure, it becomes like a little victim party, right? But if I share the failure and what you learned from it, it puts the focus on what was the path forward? What did we learn? How are we moving forward in this organization? And there's no victim in what I learned from it. There's only champion and growth.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One of the things you also talk about is high-stake discussions, high-stake conversations. So what are some things we need to think about as we're getting involved with the high-stake conversations? I know for me, at least, when I know I'm going to get into one, there's a little anxiety, right? Because it's going to be really, whether it's a big customer or whether it's a problematic employee. I've had to have many of these over my time. So what are some things we need to prepare ourselves? How do we, assert ourselves during those conversations? What are some things to think about when it comes to high stakes discussions?
Love this. I'm going to take it in two paths. Number one, frame the rush, right? The fact that you are feeling excitement, you're feeling some bit of anxiety about this upcoming high stakes thing, it shows that you care. That's what is. You're only feeling this because you care. And because you know that you care, that means you're bringing your whole self. You're bringing your hopes. You're bringing your purpose forward. And that's a beautiful thing and so much better than the narcissist that's just going up there and taking up space, right? So first of all, give yourself a pat on the back. You care. And that's where that nerves are coming from. And reframe the rush, right? Excitement, that rush of energy is going to be a rush of energy. And we can label it as fear or excitement. You have a choice. You get on a roller coaster, you go into that loop-de-loo, your body is exhilarated, and you can say, I'm scared, or this is fun, whatever you want to say. So reframe the rush. When you get that initial rush of like, oh, going into this, there's a lot of them on stake, just be like, yeah, and this is what I'm here for, and this is why I love this, and this is where my passion is, and I'm excited because I care. Just saying I'm excited rather than I'm feeling nervous, shifts part of the brain and will direct you in towards a more resourceful path. The second part of it, like how do you insert yourself? I would offer this. What neuroscience has determined is the longer that we wait to speak in a group setting, the higher the pressure is to say something substantial.
Right.
Been listening and judging everybody else's contributions, and we're about to get that focus of judgment on ourselves. So we turn the critic inside and we become paralyzed by our own desire for having the perfect, most profound. And maybe that person that said something profound in the last meeting, so everybody's waiting for you to drop that gold in this one, it just raises the pressure. So I would offer this. Break the seal early. Within the first 5 minutes of that conversation, if it's a group conversation, get your voice in the room. Get your voice in the room. And I would tell this to any leader talking to their team. I want everybody in this room to have their voice in this conversation in the first 5 minutes. That's where the pressure is. Get your voice in. and make a game out of it. The first time a person's getting used to this, it's going to stumble. They're going to sound awkward. They're going to throw out something that means nothing. One of the easiest hacks is to amplify something somebody else said. Simply saying, I want to double click on what they said, or I want to I want to add my vote, or I want to add my voice to what they said. I just want to make sure everybody heard that point that so-and-so made. What this does, gets your voice in, allows you to clarify your position, and you create an ally. Now that person likes you. So it's multifunctional. But if you break the seal early, you get that pressure off to have the most profound insight later on in the meeting.
Is this, where I see this super helpful is a lot of times introverts struggle with, staying up in the meeting. And I always say to the leaders, make sure you listen to your introverts because they're usually thinking why most people are talking. And so I can see that a lot of times as a college teacher, I see my introverts, when I ask questions, you can see them shrinking, and they don't want me to call on them, right? But I think that, like you said, as the longer the conversation goes on and nothing's said, the pressure of an introvert just gets, more and more and more. So I really like this advice. So it may be for the extroverts too, but I think specifically for introverts, they probably need to jump on that, right?
Yeah, I need to say introverts are my people. I'm an introvert.
Me too.
And that's one of the reasons why I had to learn these skills. That's one of the reasons I wrote this book is for introverts that are having to learn to own the spotlight because most communication training is geared towards more extroverted people. And so introverts are my people. And I would offer two things. If you're a leader of introverts, there's something I call the 10-second rule. And that is this. When I pose a question to the group, I need to wait 10 full seconds to allow everybody in the room to have a full cycle of thought about that question before responding. Extroverts are impulsive sometimes and will start taking up the space and share their first thoughts. And sometimes it's a really wonderful ride through their thinking until they get to a point which we appreciate, right? So nothing wrong on extroverts here. But if I can, as a leader, enforce a 10-second break between the question and the answer, I'm going to allow the introverted people, the ones to your point, have been thinking the entire time and probably have something that they've come up with that's pretty profound, give them a chance to put it all into at least a first draft before sharing it. So 10-second rule really helps in those.
Yeah, I can tell you, it's funny because that awkward silence is hard for me. If as a teacher, as a leader, it's hard. You're like, because you're feeling, the individual is, I know I'm putting a lot of stress on my introverts right now by pausing for 10 seconds. And so you want to relieve them that, like by saying, okay, well, let's move on type of thing. But you're right. You just have to hold out. And it feels like forever. 10 seconds in a meeting seems like it never ends, but it's really, yeah.
As a communication coach, I'm coaching my clients to get up sometimes on very important world stages. And the hardest thing to learn is the pause.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to hold that silence for 3 seconds to 5 seconds is critical to really show up and have presence and to get my message into the listener's minds. Yeah. Because if I just keep talking the whole time and I just continue talking, the brain doesn't really have a chance to process what's been said. It's in the pause that people change their mind. They process what has been said. And as a leader, 10 seconds is an eternity.
It feels like it.
Right? So find ways, gamify it for yourself as a leader. See how long you can make it in 10 seconds. Like set a timer. It's not easy. Or you could ask somebody else count to 10 before we get responses. If you have virtual, this is much easier because you can have everybody put into chat and have a chat waterfall, and at the end of 10 seconds, right? But yeah, 10 seconds is a gift to the introverts. Please use it.
I love that. Such great advice. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners today?
Your voice matters. Right now, more than ever, your voice matters. And if you are analytical, tech, data-driven, introverted, I need you to know that your voice matters, and getting your voice into the general conversation has never been more important. So whatever you can do to reach past your comfort zone and get your voice in is important. And if my book or I can be of any assistance, I am here for it.
Oh, that's such a powerful piece of advice. And again, you listeners, I've always said that the wisdom of a team is so much greater than the wisdom of one manager, one leader. We need your voice. The world is so complex. We need everybody's brain working on our problems. So yes, your voice is very important. Such a great message. I really appreciate you saying that. I think we need to hear that more and more. So this has been fantastic. How can our listeners find out more about you and this new book that's out?
Oh, thank you. It's been an honor to be on here, by the way. And you can go to LinkedIn, find me, Salvatore Manzi, or you can go to clearandcompellingplaybook.com. Clearandcompellingplaybook.com. You'll find access to the full resource library with a lot of downloads, including the value worksheet. We mentioned values earlier. I would love to hear from you. I always put this invitation out there. Not a lot of people take me up. But if you have a short clip of you speaking and you would like some observations from someone who's been doing this for 20 years, send the video. I would love to review it and offer some suggestions.
I love that. Listeners, we're going to put links in the show notes for all of Salvatore's resources. And you just heard that. If you want to get a little bit of advice from a communications expert, you want to videotape yourself speaking, send it to Salvatore. He's going to take a look at it, give you some feedback. We're going to put all his links and contacts in the show notes. I highly encourage you to reach out to Salvatore. He's the expert. That's why we bring experts on the show. They're the experts. I'm not. I'm just the host. But we bring him on board so that you can learn and you can have a connection there. And the book is called Clear and Compelling. I highly encourage you to find that as well. The link in the show notes for that book. Pick it up if you want to learn more about communication, especially those of you who are on the show, and I know you're there, who are a little bit introverted. I know I always say I'm a recovering introvert, and I'm getting better. I don't know if it's better. I'm becoming more extrovert over time, but I was definitely a strong introvert in the beginning of my career. And so I think this is very important for introverts as well. So Salvatore, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom on this important topic.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying, take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. For more information and updates, please visit our website at johnsrennie.com.
You deserve better healthcare, and so do we all. Medicine in America is a podcast that shares real stories of patients and doctors reshaping the future, because the revolution in care isn't coming, it's already here. Real stories, real change, a better future for healthcare.
Electricast. Electricast.
Welcome to the Candle Power Hour. Come with us backstage behind the scenes of show business spanning over 4 decades and bringing you the experiences that can only be told by the people who were there.
Our guests are from the A-list, the F-list, and everyone in between. Get set for some of the most insane, hilarious, and inspiring stories you will ever hear.
I'm Mercury.
And I'm Diego.
Your host for the Candle Power Hour.